They did not go cold when you stopped chasing. They did not smile, relax, and move on the way people like to pretend. No. The second your energy pulled back, something sharp hit them inside, something heavy, something they were not ready to name. One day you were there, easy to reach, easy to test, easy to take for granted. Then suddenly, you were quiet. Not angry, not begging, just gone from the game. And that silence did more damage than any argument ever could. Because when your attention disappeared, they lost the mirror that used to make them feel wanted, powerful, and safe. Now the room feels different. Now their phone feels louder. Now every hour feels longer than it should. Stay with me, because this is the part most people never understand. When you stop chasing, you do not only leave a space in their day, you open a door in their mind, and behind that door sits fear, pride, regret, and a question they cannot escape. What if the one person they thought would always return has truly walked away? That thought changes everything. It bends their calm face. It shakes their private thoughts. It follows them into the quiet parts of the night. And what happens next is not simple. It is not neat. It is not harmless. Because once they feel you slipping beyond their reach, they begin a battle inside themselves that can pull them in directions even they do not expect. Watch closely, because this is where the real story starts. At first, they may act untouched. That is normal. People protect their image before they face their truth. On the outside, they stay casual. They post, laugh, reply late, keep moving. But inside, something has already shifted. Your silence starts working like pressure in a sealed room. It builds slowly. It pushes into corners they kept closed for a long time. They begin to feel the missing weight of your attention in moments they never noticed before. A quiet morning. A message that never comes. A space in the day where your effort used to sit. And the strange part is this: they may not even miss you clearly at first. What they feel first is confusion, a small loss of balance, a hidden panic with no clean label. It bothers them because they were used to your presence being available. Even if they did not value it fully, they trusted it would stay. Now that trust is broken, now your absence forces them to feel life without that steady supply of attention, and that is where the deeper fear begins. They start asking themselves questions they avoided before. Why does this feel different? Why does this silence feel so loud? Why do I keep checking for something I said I did not need? Listen carefully, because the mind hates unanswered space. It hates not knowing. When there is no clear answer, it starts making one. That is why your distance becomes bigger in their mind than your presence ever was. Not because you became more dramatic, but because mystery always grows in the dark. And once their mind begins to circle that mystery, it does not let go easily. Your absence becomes a mirror. That is the real turning point. Not a punishment, not a trick, a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous to people who have lived behind masks. When you were chasing, they could stay in control of the picture. They could decide how much to give, how much to hold back, how much to reveal. They could enjoy being wanted without asking what that did to them inside. But the moment you stepped back, the image cracked. Suddenly, they are not looking at your need. They are looking at their own. Suddenly, they are not studying your feelings. They are trapped with theirs. This is where pride starts to lose its grip, because pride works best when someone else keeps feeding it. It grows strong when it can feel desired, chased, forgiven, and waited for. But when that fuel stops, pride gets exposed. Under it, there is often fear. Under that fear, there is often emptiness. And under that emptiness, there may be a painful truth they never wanted to face. Maybe they did not love the connection as much as they loved the control it gave them. That truth does not arrive gently. It comes as pressure, as restless thoughts, as late-night replay, as a sudden need to understand what changed. And what changed is simple. You stopped making them the center of your energy. That one move forces them to meet themselves without the usual comfort. And many people are not prepared for that meeting. So they begin to wrestle with memory. Every talk, every message, every look, every small moment starts to return with new meaning. Things that once felt ordinary now feel loaded. Things they ignored now seem important. And the deeper they look, the less comfortable they become. This is where the mind begins to replay everything. It does not replay with kindness. It replays with hunger. It takes small details and stretches them. A pause in your message, a softer tone, a time you smiled and seemed free without them, a day you did not react the way you used to. These moments become evidence in a private trial taking place inside their head. They study your distance the way people study danger. They start seeing patterns even if those patterns are only half real. They ask if you changed because of pain, growth, or loss of interest. They ask if someone else now gets the version of you they once had access to. And this is where jealousy can quietly enter. Not always the loud kind. Sometimes it comes as curiosity. Sometimes as watching. Sometimes as the need to know where you are, who you speak to, how easily you laugh now. Because the mind would rather see a painful answer than sit with empty space. Empty space feels endless. It feels out of control. It forces them to imagine your life moving forward without them, and that image is hard to carry. Stay with this point because it matters. It is not only missing you that shakes them, it is the thought that you may be becoming more whole without them. That idea hits deep. It touches pride. It touches regret. It touches the quiet fear that maybe they were not as unforgettable as they believed. So they begin to measure themselves against your silence. And silence always says more than people expect. It says, I can live without proving anything to you. I can step back. I can stop feeding a story that no longer respects me. That message lands harder than words. Once that message lands, doubt starts spreading through them. Doubt is slow, but it is powerful. They begin to question choices they once defended with ease. Did they push too far? Did they keep you close while giving too little? Did they enjoy your loyalty without respecting its cost? These questions do not show up all at once. They slip in during weak moments, while driving, while lying awake, while watching life move around them as if nothing changed, even though something clearly did. This is when regret starts getting sharp. Not romantic regret, not soft regret. The kind that stings because it could have been avoided. The kind that whispers, you had something real and treated it like it would always stay. And once that whisper begins, it rarely stays quiet. They start rewriting old scenes in their head. In one version, they answer differently. In another, they give more. In another, they stop the game before it costs them your trust. But none of those versions help, because the present is still empty. The present still has your silence in it. And that silence keeps showing them the gap between what they assumed and what is actually true. Here is the hard part. People can tolerate rejection better than uncertainty. Rejection is painful, but it has shape. It says yes or no. It ends the story cleanly. Uncertainty is worse. It leaves the door open just enough for the mind to suffer. It gives hope and fear the same seat at the table. That is why your quiet affects them so deeply. It offers no speech to fight with, no begging to dismiss, no drama to label. It only offers absence. And absence makes the imagination work over time. What comes next matters because this is often where their inner balance starts to break. As the pressure builds, their emotions stop lining up in a clean way. They do not only feel longing, they may feel anger too. They may feel insulted, exposed, replaced, guilty, and strangely helpless all at once. This mix is what makes their behavior hard to predict. One minute they may miss you, the next they may resent the fact that they miss you. One minute they may want to reach out, the next they may feel ashamed for needing to. That back and forth becomes exhausting. It creates an inner swing between desire and defense. They want relief, but they do not want to lose face. They want connection, but they do not want to admit your distance has power over them. They want to know if they still matter, but they may not know how to ask without sounding weak. So the storm grows in secret. They carry it into normal life, into work, into sleep, into conversations with other people who have no idea what is happening beneath the surface. And because they cannot settle it quickly, their mind starts creating stories. Maybe you are trying to teach them a lesson. Maybe you have met someone else. Maybe you never cared the way they thought. Maybe you cared more than anyone else, and now that loss is final. Each story hits a different nerve, but all of them keep one thing alive. Focus on you. That is the hidden force of stepping back. It turns your absence into a living question inside them. And human beings do not handle open questions well when pride is involved. They start wanting an answer, a sign, a crack in the silence. Not because they are calm enough to understand their feelings, but because the pressure of not knowing becomes too heavy to hold for long. Then comes the stage where they start looking for movement. Not always direct movement. Sometimes it begins with checking, watching, testing the air. They may look at old messages. They may revisit memories they once brushed aside. They may wonder if there is still a path back to your attention. This does not mean they have become clear or healed. It means the pressure has grown strong enough that doing nothing feels harder than before. Remember this, the mind always wants to close loops. When something important feels unfinished, it keeps circling until it finds a way to reduce the tension. That is why your silence can pull such strong reactions. You became an unfinished sentence in their mind. A door left half open, a truth left half spoken. And now they cannot stop hearing it. They may tell themselves they only want closure. They may say they just want to clear the air. But deeper down, what they often want is to feel your energy turn back toward them again, even for a moment. That one moment would calm the panic. It would restore a sense of influence. It would reassure the wounded part of them that they have not been fully left behind. But if that reassurance does not come, the pressure grows again. They start noticing every sign of your independence more deeply. The fact that your life still moves. The fact that you still smile. The fact that the world did not stop just because you walked away from their pull. That can be deeply unsettling for someone who quietly believed your focus would always circle back. And if you keep your distance, the lesson gets louder without you saying a word. This is the part many people misunderstand. Your silence is not empty. It is active. It speaks through what it refuses to do. It refuses to chase. It refuses to explain itself again and again. It refuses to shrink just to keep someone comfortable. That kind of silence changes the emotional balance. It takes away the old rhythm where they could stay relaxed while you carried the weight. Now they must carry something. Now they must sit with the ache of not being able to pull you back on command. And once they feel that, they begin seeing you differently. The version of you that once looked endlessly available now looks solid, self-held, harder to read, harder to bend. That change can create a strange mix of respect and panic. Respect because strength has become visible. Panic because strength cannot be managed the same way. Watch this part closely. When a person realizes they can no longer predict your return, their mind starts preparing for loss in a much more serious way. Not the dramatic kind they talk about. The quiet kind that enters the body first. Tightness in the chest. Restless sleep. Random waves of thought. Sudden mood shifts they cannot explain. Your absence has touched something older than logic. It has reached the deep part of the self that hates separation, hates uncertainty, and hates realizing too late that something valuable was treated carelessly. This is when their calm outer mask may begin to slip in small ways. Maybe not publicly, maybe not all at once. But inside, order starts giving way to strain. And strain, if left alone long enough, always looks for release. Sometimes that release comes as memory. They begin remembering you with a sharper lens. Not only your kindness, but your patience. Not only your attention, but your consistency. They remember the small things they overlooked because they assumed those things would continue forever. A certain tone in your voice, a way you checked in, a look that showed care without asking for praise. These details return with surprising force because loss makes value easier to see. What was once normal now feels rare. What was once easy now feels distant. And that distance hurts more because they know somewhere inside that they helped create it. This is where self-blame can enter, quietly at first, then more directly. They begin to see the moments where they held back warmth, gave mixed signals, enjoyed being pursued, or delayed honesty because your effort made delay feel safe. The hard truth becomes impossible to avoid. You were not difficult to keep, but you were easy to take for granted. That realization can cut deep. It turns your absence into a lesson about their own behavior. It shows them what they ignored about themselves while they were busy measuring your reactions. And when people see themselves clearly in that way, one of two things usually happens. They either grow or they resist. Some soften, some harden, some finally admit what mattered. Others become defensive because the truth feels too expensive to accept. But whether they soften or resist, the inside has already changed. Your silence has moved the ground beneath them. And once the ground moves, even the strongest performance starts to shake. That is why what seems like nothing from the outside can become everything on the inside. The longer the distance stays real, the more their fantasy of control begins to collapse. This is a major shift. Before, they may have believed they could return whenever they wanted. They may have assumed your care was permanent, your patience renewable, your door never fully closed. But time has a way of exposing false confidence. Every day you remain steady in your distance, that old belief weakens. Every quiet day says the same thing in a new way. Access is not guaranteed. That truth can hit harder than any direct rejection. Because rejection may still allow a person to blame you, dismiss you, or call you emotional. But steady silence gives them fewer excuses. It leaves them with themselves. It says, you are facing a result, not a performance. And results are harder to argue with. Now they start feeling something they avoided for a long time. Consequence. Consequence without a fight. Consequence without a scene. Consequence delivered by your absence alone. That is why they may become more restless as time goes on instead of less. People assume distance always makes others forget. Sometimes it does, but sometimes distance exposes desire, regret, and emotional dependence that were hidden under pride. This is especially true when they were used to your pursuit. When that pattern breaks, they do not just miss a person, they miss a source of certainty about themselves. They miss the comfort of being chosen without having to fully earn it. And once that comfort is gone, they may begin to feel emotionally unsteady in ways that surprise even them. This is not weakness in a simple sense. It is collision. A collision between image and truth, between what they told themselves and what your silence has revealed. As that collision grows, they may start imagining different endings. The mind does this when reality feels too sharp. It invents scenes where they reach out and you answer warmly. Scenes where they explain themselves and you understand. Scenes where they return and the old feeling comes back exactly as it was. But mixed into those scenes may be darker ones too. Scenes where you never reply. Scenes where you move on fully. Scenes where someone else now receives what they once held carelessly in their hands. These inner pictures create emotional swings that are hard to manage. One moment hope rises. The next moment fear cuts it down. One moment they feel ready to act. The next they freeze. This instability can make them feel unlike themselves. That is because they are no longer protected by the old illusion of control. They are exposed to the raw uncertainty they once placed on you. And raw uncertainty changes people. It humbles some. It unsettles others. It can even push hidden traits to the surface. The need to test, the need to provoke, the need to see if they still have emotional reach. This is why some people come back softly while others come back strangely. Not because they suddenly understand everything, but because the pressure inside them demands movement. Keep listening, because this matters. A person under emotional pressure does not always act from wisdom. Sometimes they act from hunger, sometimes from fear, sometimes from a desperate wish to stop the noise inside their own head. That is why your silence can become the turning point of the whole connection. It forces what was hidden to reveal itself, not only in them, but in the entire dynamic that once existed between you both. And still, the deepest part of the lesson is not about them. It is about what your silence proves. It proves that love without self-respect becomes pursuit. It proves that attention given without limits can train people to value access more than substance. It proves that stepping back is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is clarity. Sometimes it is the first honest act after a long season of overgiving. That is why your distance feels so strong. It is not only a break in contact, it is a break in pattern. It stops the emotional machine that used to run on your effort. Once that machine stops, truth becomes easier to hear. They hear it as loss, confusion, longing, or panic. You hear it as peace slowly returning. And that difference matters, because while they are trying to understand what disappeared, you may be learning what becomes possible when you stop performing for love. You may be seeing your own worth more clearly. You may be realizing how much energy you spent trying to be chosen by someone who was comfortable receiving without fully giving. That realization is powerful. It changes the way you stand. It changes what you accept. It changes the tone of your silence. Now it is no longer wounded silence. It becomes chosen silence. Deliberate silence, clean silence. And that kind of silence has a force people can feel, even from far away. They feel it because it no longer begs to be answered. It no longer trembles. It no longer asks for permission to leave. It simply moves. And when someone senses that you have truly moved in that deeper way, the pressure inside them often rises again. Because now they are not only missing your attention, they are witnessing your transformation beyond their reach. That is when the final truth starts coming into view. You were never meant to spend your life proving your value to someone who benefited from your doubt. You were never meant to chase so long that your own peace became the price. And the person who once felt safe in your pursuit begins to understand that too, though usually later than they want to admit. They start to see that what they lost was not just attention. It was a rare kind of care, a rare kind of patience, a rare kind of presence that did not fully understand its own worth until it walked away. That understanding can shake them deeply because rare things are often recognized only after they are gone, and once recognized, they are not easily forgotten. This is why the silence continues to work on them long after the last message. It is not magic. It is reflection. It is consequence. It is the sound of a pattern ending. And patterns, once broken, reveal everything they used to hide. So if they seem uneasy, it is because your absence has made them meet parts of themselves they avoided. If they seem restless, it is because your stillness has taken away the old game. If they seem drawn back, it is because certainty left with you and they do not know how to replace it. The truth is simple even if it feels heavy. When you stopped chasing, you did not lose power. You recovered it. And in recovering it, you changed the story for both of you. One of you now has to face what was ignored. The other now gets to face what is possible, and that shift, quiet as it looks, can alter everything. So if you are in that silence now, understand what it really means. It does not mean you failed. It does not mean your care meant nothing. It means the chase has ended and reality has begun. It means they must sit with the shape of your absence and decide what it reveals about them. It means you must protect the peace you earned by stepping back. And yes, what happens next may be intense. They may reach out. They may test the water. They may try to pull the story backward into something familiar. But it will never be the same, because the mirror has already been lifted. The old comfort is gone. The old ease is gone. They now know you can leave the role they assigned you. They now know you can stop feeding the cycle. And once that knowledge exists, it cannot be undone. This is why your silence feels so large. It is not loud, but it is final in a way words rarely are. It says, I will not chase what does not choose me clearly. It says, I can care and still walk away. It says the empty space you feel now is not my punishment. It is the truth finally arriving. And for many people, truth arrives late. It arrives after pride, after confusion, after regret, after all the explanations stop working. But when it arrives, it changes the air. It changes the pulse. It changes what can no longer be denied. And maybe the hardest line of all is the one they finally hear inside themselves when the noise settles. I kept looking at them, but the person I was really avoiding was me.